Welcome to the TTS Talking Educators podcast. Each week, we'll be joined by educational experts from across the globe, offering exclusive insights, inspiration, and guidance to help practitioners unlock the potential for learning in educational settings. Hello, my name is Mark Loveday, your host for this week's TTS Talking Early Years podcast. I'm the headmaster of Arran College, an independent co-educational day and boarding school for students aged 7 to 19, specialising in dyslexia and co-occurring specific learning difficulties. I'm a specialist teacher, a specialist leader of education for SEND, and have taught across primary, secondary and sixth form in both mainstream and specialist settings, holding a variety of leadership roles. I've previously set up and led SEND advisory teaching services, been responsible for the creation of diagnostic pathways for dyslexia, dyscalculia and dyspraxia, and created and led an alternative provision for students experiencing emotional-based school avoidance, which won Alternative Provision of the Year in 2023. I'm also a board director for the SPLD Assessment Standards Committee, SASC, a trustee of a multi-academy trust, and I'm a national and international speaker. To round up our fourth and final episode with Arran Smith, we will discuss inclusive environments for children with specific learning difficulties, looking at how we can support children in school and how to work with parents and external agencies effectively. But first, welcome back, Arran. Really good to see you again.
Welcome back to you, Mark, as well. I think it's brilliant. We've had a roller coaster of a ride talking about lots of things.
Absolutely.
It's been brilliant.
Brilliant. Can you give us a bit of an introduction?
So for those who don't know who I am, Arran Smith, I am a severely dyslexic adult who has spent the last 20 years working in the field of dyslexia and neurodiversity. I previously worked for the British Dyslexia Association, and for the last 8 years, I've been the founder of the SEND group that delivers CPD and inclusive education through knowledge, support and resource. And I'm also the founder of the Neurodiversity Show that takes place on the 9th and 10th of May. It's been supported by Arran College and, of course, by TTS Resource.
Brilliant. And we are very much looking forward to it. And I'm very much looking forward to speaking to TTS as well. So see you there.
I know, it's going to be good.
Very exciting. Yeah. So if we start looking really at that, so we start with inclusive environments, because I think that really feeds on nicely from our last podcast.
It does, yeah. And I think it's really interesting. What I'm going to throw it back to you, because I want to know something, right? So because I've listened now to your introduction 4 times. So you talked about pathways in dyspraxia.
Yes.
And that to me fascinates me, because it's like because that's an area where I find difficult. So I know a little bit about dyspraxia because I have been screened as being dyspraxic, but actually for me, I can very much look at inclusive classrooms and inclusive environments for the whole of concept of SEND. But that to me is fascinating. So what do you think of that bit? How did you deliver that, and how would you deliver that?
The pre-dyspraxia support or the dyspraxia pathway?
Both.
Both. So the dyspraxia pathway that we created was part of the SEND advisory services in my previous role. And actually, that was working really closely with health professionals. It was taking into account that co-occurrence of need. So, the fact that my specialist teachers could assess and diagnose as I can myself. We were unpicking the dyslexia, dyscalculia. But then if we also think about this co-occurrence, which we talked about in an earlier podcast, around the possibly 50% or up to 50% of children with dyslexia may have a co-occurrence with dyslexia or DCD, as kind of the international terminology. Actually, how do we then break that down and assess for that? And we basically started by upskilling my staff, working with occupational therapists, working with behavioural optometrists, around this idea of really, when we're picking up motor difficulties in school, what does that look like? And what is it? Is it purely a motor difficulty, leading to something like dyspraxia? Is it, hopefully not, but something more sinister that needs unpicking, deeper? Is it dysgraphia? A term we don't particularly utilise. And actually, we did a series of actually just looking at basal level vision assessments and the idea of visual perception, vision tracking, and unpicking initially, but then looking at again the second part of this podcast, really, a referral to an external agency, in that case a behavioural optometrist. And really important of looking for those carefully. That's an optometrist who really looks how the eye functions rather than acuity.
Yeah.
So BABO, British Association of Behavioural Optometrists, is a great place to start there. And really unpick, if it's not a vision aspect, really then start thinking about high quality input around motor coordination and tracking that all the time, that graduated response. And where it's not working, or we're not seeing that improvement, really then thinking about the OT referral.
And I think that's really interesting for this topic that we're doing. Because so for me, the small problem that I do is I go into presenter mode, don't I, rather than actually guest mode. That's what you sometimes do, because basically I know. Well, we know each other very well, so that was the thing. So I think the reason I wanted to understand that was because for me, I look at dyslexia, I look at dyspraxia, dyslexia, dyscalculia, slightly around ADHD, the concept of neurodiversity, how that sits in with the with autism, and also then with then dyspraxia and DCD, and also dysgraphia. And I think that's an interesting thing because actually, when we look at provision and look at kind of inclusivity, actually, when you look at some specialism, some special schools, independent sector, actually, when you look at kind of what they've done around that neuro inclusion concept, that becomes really important because actually, have we actually taught children to walk in a straight line? Have we actually taught children how to sit down? All right. And actually, and we talked about this at the very beginning when we started recording some of these podcasts about the as you call it, the oh, now I forgot what you call it, the fruit crumb, the round, oh, I've forgotten the name of the sweet you called it, the seat we're talking about, Stapleton.
The fruit pastel sweet.
Fruit pastel, that's the word. That's the thing. Yes, that's the thing. Yes, so that's the thing. Yes, the fruit pastel sweet. Now, and the thing what is, you see, that kind of concept there of actually having that kind of chair that may wobble a little bit, that may support, that kind of concept there, that it's called a Stapleton, and it's a TTS resource, is a really positive concept. And that, to me, really changes ability. And I think this is where inclusive environments it's actually, yes, there's this thing about having lots of resource, but actually, have we got the right coloured paint on the wall? Right? Have we changed? Is the carpet different? Different, and that's the thing. And that's the thing there. It's kind of like that concept there that we have to look at, and that's what then kind of helps that thing. Because even though we may be looking at, let's say, dyslexia, we're looking at the concept that actually dyslexia is often about rewriting and spelling, and that's what we're concentrating on. Let's actually look at that emotional part of it. Let's look at that anxiety part of it. It may be this thing. I remember when I was at school counting ceiling tiles, right? But never really wanted to look at the one on the right-hand side or the left. It was on the left-hand side looking at it, actually thinking, because there was a stain on the ceiling. And it looked a bit weird, right? But where actually the Artex ceiling in a room in my office actually is quite nice to look at when the light's shining on it at different times of day, because actually it looks like mountains. So it's kind of thing. And that's where actually these environments really can actually support young people.
They really can. And I think, we need to be thinking about inclusive environments in terms of, areas. So, for example, height adjustable tables, for children to be able to stand, for children to be able to kneel, sit on a wobble seat. Thinking about this whole idea, you and I touched on it last time around visual perception when you talked about fonts, and I was talking about form constancy.
Yeah.
But actually, something as simple as a writing slope, or in secondary, a lever arch file, actually not only improves posture, but it also improves our visual field. So straight away improving our visual figure ground and our visual perception, and an inclusive classroom.
Yeah, and that comes down to the concept of also when we're looking at technology in say in a computer room or even using a laptop, actually that position of desk, the position of the chair, it's quite important. I just think it is for me. Looking at that provision concept of having that thing, I remember at school having that learning support room. Now I remember both the two schools that I did for secondary. So my year 7, 8, and 9 school, and then my GCSE years, both had classrooms for SEND. And actually, there's things in that I remember. So the classroom in that first school was very yellow. It had a computer in a computer trolley that had a big box around it that could be locked, so you could steal the monitor. Fair enough. I'll mention the story about that in a second. And then it's just funny, it is. And then going into that other room where it was kind of a bit dark and a bit of a rubbish car park, but It then had the little computer room area that was nice and bright. It had like one of these light tunnels from the thing. So actually, it made it a bit nicer. That's where I wanted to sit because the light was there, and how light became really important to me. So we used to have the whiteboards, but they used to have lights over them. But there was no starter in the light, so the bulb, the fluorescent tube wouldn't come on. So I used to carry a starter. I used to have a note from the Senko so that I could carry this starter around with me, so I could actually turn it on because I found that useful to see things. That thing. Now, when I was at secondary school, I was spent a lot of time in the deputy head's office, the vice principal's office. Not for being naughty, it's because he taught me how to use PowerPoint, and I used to write the PowerPoints for parents' evening. So I used to have this PowerPoint. So we used to carry this computer up the steps because, of course, there's no ramps in our school then. They used to put it in the front there, and it used to go, "Welcome to parents' evening," like PowerPoint, like literally Times Roman New in italic, really bad font, but right. Sign in this way, deputy head this way, right, Senko this way, and at the end, hope you like the slideshow. No one spell checked it. I hope you lick the slideshow. Anyway, my dad read it to me. Why do you want to lick the slideshow? It's fine. It's all good fun. So, but no, I think that, yeah. But I actually think that concept there. So having that, we're talking mainly about primary, but actually just looking at secondary for a few seconds. For me, having that space for me to go to is really a thing. And even thinking about the primary schools that I've been in, having like in the primary school that I'm a Senko at, our Senko's office has a table in it, has a sink in it, it has a tent in it. Right. Now that tent it's not a century tent, it's literally a wigwam tent. That it is a toy tent. But you know what? For 2 children, that just calms them down and allows them to access education, which is, and it's not actually rocket science. It's not meant to be that environment, but that's what it does. So you know what? Let's keep it.
And I think it's about using our classrooms differently. So I mean, I absolutely love the TTS sensory tent.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's brilliant. And I think, the one thing, I'm always talking about is actually how do we use that? So we've got it as a safe space. We've got it as a space where we could just, go in and regulate oneself. But actually, why aren't we going in, for example, and putting our sight words up in the tent and using a torch and going and finding our sight words and
or
part of the classroom?
Yeah, even better, using the illuminated writing slate, right? Yeah. And then basically then going, right, okay, turn number 1 on. Or turn number 2 on, and having having guided meditation in there to talk through it and go, well, now try number 1, and pausing the meditation to go, actually, nothing. So again, calming concepts. You know what? That to me, even I want to do that now.
Completely. Or even just having it, the one side of it becoming interactive. So, the argument teachers often have is, I haven't got the room for it. Well, let's not think about it as one tent for one individual. Let's think about this is our classroom. This is our learning environment, which includes our tent. So, having things like, you're talking postcard on there with your instructions, or even just simple as something like an iPad that you can safely Velcro onto the side. And really start having this idea of interactivity. So it doesn't just be, that's little Johnny's tent, or that's that's Anna's tent, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and that thing actually, like having that iPad, there is so many free sensory apps from Sensory App House that like the government have mentioned this a number of times. It's literally, there's millions of people have downloaded these apps that maybe just like send a sound of an electric shock, which kind of really engages someone, or there's round bubbles you can touch and it will make them move. You know what? That changes things, and that kind of makes things there. But actually, I think also the concept of inclusive environments is sometimes less is better than more.
Completely. We don't want an explosion.
No. And that is the, and I think that's the thing you see. It's like I think for me, corridors are really good for explosions. That's a really good concept unless you are a school for children with autism or a real sensory needs. And that's the thing. So I went to an amazing school in London once. I did, and it was absolutely brilliant to see that they were there. And they have a very clean wall because they are a school designed for autistic children. Everything is very clean. It's very much like things there. Now, the head that I met there, he decided to do one thing that changed and actually really enhanced that is he put photos of children. So he put real good photos of children engaging with work, right? So not a photo of like a whole team or really active photos, but really simple, plain photos, which really changed it. And that is the thing for me, and that's where kind of that concept there is really powerful. It is
completely. I think if we look at that kind of visual perception and take it back into the classroom, things like just not only decluttering workspaces, but decluttering the worksheets, improving that visual feel, giving different learning environments. I think the final point, because I'm aware we probably need to really think about wrapping it up, but the final point really is around that engaging with external agencies around this support and this not only diagnosis but that support you can.
And that's really important. I think the downside to I think there's a downside and a positive. I think there's some amazing agencies out there. Like we've mentioned in the first one, we mentioned about Cadmus. We know about your previous service you used to work with, our brilliant services. And even here in Leicester, we're quite lucky that our local authority provide a free service. Yeah. And actually that is really beneficial. Yes, our school authority have paid for it in some way, but it's not really like, okay, I've got this child, I've got to find £600 or £700 to go and do something. But actually, if we plan this as part of our school budgets and we kind of think about this concept as actually, okay, I have a SEND budget, I need to spend that on X. Yes, I might not be able to spend that on every child, but if I find a service or a supportive atmosphere or an agency that actually can help me do multiple things, that's value for money. And that is the thing. But I think it's really important that we do take that advice on. We do not know what we don't know.
I think that is the starting point. Teacher training doesn't cover this. And I'm passionate about the advisory teaching services being relevant and current. We're certainly looking at that here at Frome. We're looking at launching the Frome Advisory Support Team to get that outreach knowledge of us as a specialist into our local maintained sector schools.
And the thing is that for you've got so much support there and so much resource that you're using for your students. Actually, that's a logical thing to then diversify and give back. It is, and that's it. And it's the same thing. We look at the neurodiversity show as a prime example. That was the dyslexia show. That was the dyslexia dyscalculia show. It's named to be the neurodiversity show. But one of the things we're doing this year is we've launched our academic papers. So we're basically asking for academics to share their posters at the show. Now that's a very small section of the show, but actually that then starts that cycle again of getting knowledge into getting that kind of that theory into practice, and that practice then into product, into service, into development, and also kind of going, you know what, we're never going to be a normal events company. We're not a normal events company because I care too much about the community. We're a community company that wants to support the community, and it's sometimes very hard to explain that to people that actually when you do a snapshot advert of a product or a service, actually we're not there. And I think that's where people like TTS as an organisation, when you look at them and talk to them at events, actually you see they've thought about the product. Yes, they've got to make money, they've got to live, that's not a problem, we understand that, but actually having products and services that support people for the right reason is really important. And I think that's the same with me when I look at SEND books, when I look at flex tables, when I look at trugs, and SEND Group, and that we kind of do it. And I think for me, we just need to kind of help our teachers make the informed choice to support every child in their classroom and in their school.
Completely. And I think, that's where, like you say, that's where TTS really bring that together, because actually they're working with experts in the field to really go, actually, how can we utilise that product? And I think that really sums up, the podcast, really, doesn't it? It's about inclusive environments, thinking a little bit outside of the box, and how can we use resources differently. Tap into external agencies, educational companies and providers saying, look, I've got this resource, what else can I do? People like TTS have got blogs on their website, people reviewed products. You and I have both done that. And actually how have we used it in a more creative way? But equally, tap into your specialists, tap into those advisory teams.
Definitely.
Come and give us some ideas. This is what we're trying. We're not sure if it's right, it's not working. Give us that advice.
And don't be afraid to ask a question.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You don't know what you don't know until you don't know it. And then you can do something about that. So I think, thank you so much, Arran.
Thank you, Mark. It's been amazing.
Thank you for that. Really appreciate it. Nice to see you again.
Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'd like to say a huge thank you to our guest, Arran, for joining us and providing such valuable insights. You've been listening to the TTS Talking Educators podcast with me, Mark Loveday, and Arran Smith. If you've been inspired by our conversation today, don't forget you can sign up via the link in our episode notes to be the first to hear about future episodes and access exclusive follow-up content, including ideas for your settings and links to relevant resources.